What a difference Rhys Hoskins makes, man. What a difference. I was going back and forth with some people on Twitter last week about the importance of Rhys Hoskins. And I know Rhys has become, I understand why, but he's become a lightning rod. And whether it's not hitting well with runners in scoring position, whether it's flailing at pitches that are just outside the zone that you're used to seeing him foul off, the on-base percentage is far down than what it was throughout his career. Even though the last couple of months he's actually turned that around, he's gotten on base pretty well. But the interesting thing with Rhys is the beginning of his career started out red hot, as we all know. But it's not like Rhys has become this big money guy that is eating up a lot of what's around the luxury tax for the Phillies. I get to an extent why he takes a lot of the heat, and I think it's because he's the guy that's really been here the longest. He's the guy that I think is the team leader. He's the guy that I think a lot of guys on the team look at as their vocal leader in the clubhouse. And when he wasn't in that lineup, I mean, it's a pretty big swing. You're talking about being about 5 games over 500 with him. Or should be 8 games over 500 with Rhys Hoskins in the lineup. And then 5 games under 500 with Rhys Hoskins out of the lineup. So that's a pretty big swing right there. He comes back yesterday, hits you 2 home runs, makes you feel pretty good about this lineup. JT Realmuto hits a home run for you. You had another good game from Odubel Herrera. He's really come around over the last month again. This team is clicking on all cylinders when you have Rhys Hoskins in the lineup. And then you also now have Gene Segura back for an extended period. Didi Gregorius still really needs to figure it out. JT Realmuto is playing well. Bryce Harper obviously playing well. For whatever reason, Rhys is the guy that makes this lineup go. And getting him back yesterday, you could certainly hear it in the players' voices after the game, Kyle Gibson being one of them who pitched one hell of a game yesterday. There's this certain comfort with Rhys in the lineup where I think Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto, the 2 other guys that I would put in that leader category, both those guys I feel look up to Rhys Hoskins in a way in terms of controlling this clubhouse, motivating this clubhouse, holding players accountable in this clubhouse. And when he's not playing, it doesn't really carry the same weight. Whatever it is, it's an odd thing. And it's not baseball, but this is something that I'll never forget because I feel like when you're a player, regardless if you're injured, regardless if you're playing, whatever it might be, if you're a leader, and that's that. But I'll never forget this. I remember talking to a member of the Eagles years ago with Brian Dawkins, when Brian Dawkins is, your free safety and you're going in the midst of his Hall of Fame career. And I remember talking to a starter on the defense of that team. And I remember the scene. It was the Eagles had a linebacker, I think it was Mike McCoy, who was on the sidelines having a rough game. And I want to say they were playing in Minnesota. And Brian Dawkins went over to him. Brian Dawkins was injured. Brian Dawkins wasn't playing. I think he had a stinger at the time. And Brian Dawkins went over to Mike McCoy, and he just started ripping into him and yelling and trying to get him fired up and all that stuff. And I remember asking this player, Dawkins' teammate at the time, about that thing. Like, hey, what a great leader. Brian Dawkins, he's not even playing, but he's still going to get you motivated. And this player's response changed my outlook on injured leaders forever. And he said, oh, if you're not playing, no one wants to hear from you. And I remember thinking, but that's Brian Dawkins. And he goes, yeah, if you're not playing, no one really cares what you have to say. And I was blown away by that. So now I apply it to every sport. I'm like, if you're a leader on a team and you won't even listen to, like, if you're a player on a team, you won't even listen to Brian Dawkins who's not injured, then who's listening to anybody else if they're not playing? If that's really the attitude, if that's really the mindset. I mean, I've heard other people come out and say the exact opposite, what you would expect them to say. If you have that clout, if you carry that much weight, people are going to listen to you no matter what. That's the way I would think of it. But I'm like, wow, do some players really think of it like that? Where if you're not playing, it's kind of, okay, cool, glad you're here, but you're not out there battling with me, whatever it might be. So even with Rhys Hoskins, obviously a much lesser degree than Brian Dawkins, are people ignoring what he's saying or are people ignoring his presence because he's simply not there on the field? And when I think about it, if you're a player, it's always going to come down to who's out there on the field with you at that given moment. But in a sport like baseball, that's not nearly as intense of a game like football. Do players still carry that same type of mindset? So that's always in the back of my mind whenever I'm thinking about any type of leader, whether that be Chase Utley, whether that be Jimmy Rollins, whoever that might be in the clubhouse, I'm always thinking about that. If that guy's not playing, are they still carrying that same amount of weight? And the way the Phillies have played recently, it would certainly lend itself to the idea of not carrying the same weight. Hey, look, Rhys Hoskins come back yesterday and he goes 0 for 4, 0 for 5, doesn't hit home runs. We're not even talking about this. The fact that he came back and hit you 2 bombs yesterday to help you get to this win, this 7-4 win over the Padres, that's totally different. That's a totally different conversation. But when you see him come back in this lineup and you see him swing with the confidence that he had yesterday, you see him go out there and just do exactly what you want Rhys Hoskins to do, it does give you a little bit different of an outlook when you talk about being 5 games out of the wild card, 5 games right now out of the NL East. You have a little bit more than you have about 6 weeks left in the season. It does give you a little bit, and the biggest caveat to all this, the fact that you face the easiest schedule still throughout all of baseball, it kind of does give you a little bit of hope that you can make it back from 5. Now, if you remember last week when we were talking to Charlie Manuel, Charlie was great, and he was talking about how many games they were down to the Mets in 2007, and they ended up coming back. Down 7 games. 7 games back with 17 left to play. The Phillies came back, and they were able to win the division the first time since 93. I'm hoping they got that pixie dust ready for him again this season, because it doesn't look like the Braves are going to cool down at any point. The Braves are red hot, as I said at the top of the show, won 9 in a row. 9 in a row. And nobody's slowing down in that lineup right now, and that's after they lost one of their best players, Acuna, a couple of weeks ago. So they have shown zero signs of slowing down.